So in this section, I want to talk a little bit about why we dodge and burn as opposed to what dodge and burn is, because I think it's also important to know why it's done in photography. And that is basically, like I previously said, it's to diminish distracting elements in the skin on a micro level. And then on a macro level, it's more to create depth in your image. One of the oldest tricks that photographers have done for many years is the additive and subtractive light when it comes to the concept of dodging and burning in camera. So a lot of times, I do a lot of headshot photography in Washington, D.C., and a lot of times I will have clients come in, and on a given day of doing headshots, I know I'll hear this at least 2 or 3 times. The gentleman or lady will come in and they'll say, I need you to shave a couple pounds off me in Photoshop. And usually what that means is, I'm immediately going to start posing them in the right position. I may shoot from a little bit of a higher angle to be more flattering. But also, if somebody is worried about the area under the chin or a double chin, one old photography trick is to basically use subtractive light to ostensibly push back that area and make it look like it's further away from camera. So, have you ever wondered why a reflector has a black side? That's why. Putting a black reflector under that area is going to almost subtract light from that area and make it look as if it's further away from camera. If you light something, you want it to give the illusion that it's closer to camera, and if you subtract light from it, you want to give the illusion that it's further away from camera. So let's look at some examples on the computer screen. If you think about what a wrinkle is, as I said earlier, it's basically a highlight next to a shadow area. So if you're a real glutton for punishment and you want to really hone in your dodge and burn skills, my suggestion to you would be to take an image that looks like this and basically make it look flat by darkening the highlight areas and by lightening the shadow areas. But let me tell you, not everybody has time to do this, but what it will do is it will really hone in your skill of what dodge and burn does, and it'll allow you to totally grasp the concept and jumpstart you into using it in every single image that you have, not only in portraits, but every single image that you have. Let me show you a few more examples. Here we have very simple, rudimentary 2 lines on a piece of paper. And as you can tell, it's extremely flat. There isn't even the suggestion of anything being 3-dimensional as it currently stands. As soon as we add a highlight and a shadow to one of these lines by just adding brightness and then adding darkness, immediately what it does is it pops that area off the page and makes it look like it's actually 3-dimension even though it's not. And again, just to kind of bat this home again, if I'm going to use my gradient tool, and I'm going to come over here and then shift. As I add a gradient to this area, you can see that I can literally change the direction of where the light looks like it's hitting this pipe by basically just changing where the highlight is and where the shadow area is. Let's go back. There, the light is hitting from the top. And then if we move forward, you can see that now it looks like the light is actually straight on. I'm just going to show one more example. So we have our 2D egg, 2-dimensional egg here. And then as soon as I add a highlight and a shadow area, that egg really starts to pop off the page. and look as if it's a three-dimensional object. As well, we've added a shadow underneath so that you can really have the illusion of 3D. And just to bang the same concept home, I want to show you a third concept here where we have two 2D beach balls, and now immediately one of them looks more three-dimensional by just adding that shadow on the back end over here. I want to talk a little bit about spherical objects and how they pertain to retouching and portrait photography specifically, because I think that this is important. If you think about an eyeball is basically a sphere. It's the same shape as a beach ball. That's why it's called a ball. So what I see a lot of people do when they start retouching is they're going to take the corners of the eye whites and brighten them up to radioactive brightness. And so what you're basically doing is you're taking a three-dimensional object which has natural light fall off on either side, has a natural hotspot and natural light fall off, and by brightening the two corners, you're flattening that object, right? We have our piece of paper, and as you can see, there's a highlight and a shadow on the piece of paper. As soon as we flatten it, there's no highlight and there's no shadow. So basically what you're doing is you think you're retouching to get a better image, but what you're actually doing is working against yourself to create a faker look to your retouch. So definitely keep that in mind. I'm okay with whitening eye whites, especially if it's an older individual, because as people age, their eye whites actually go from a bluish tinge to a yellowish tinge as they age. If you look at a baby's eye whites, they're actually blue. So if you're looking for a very subliminal way to add youth to your portraits or to the people that you're photographing, don't necessarily think about brightening the eye whites as much as changing their color further away from yellow and closer to blue, because that's going to do the same exact thing as brightening. But when it comes to brightening, I'm okay with brightening the eye whites closest to the iris, but don't take that brightening effect all the way out to the corners of the eye, because that's not going to do you any good. In one of our later chapters, I'm going to talk specifically about how we dodge and burn features. In closing, why we dodge and burn is just as important as how we dodge and burn. So I really want to help you guys understand the concepts behind it before we get to the practical section.